This book by Michael Janda. He also has a YouTube channel where he has pretty good tutorials, and it's one of those books. But I just took it as sort of like, I skipped a lot of the chapters out of here, but I'm going to sprinkle in some of my own experiences and how to run the business and price your work right. So you can work every day, but you need to set up some kind of routine. Otherwise, you're going to go insane because you can't be this super genius creative guy every day. Sometimes you just need to work to get things done. So you're not going to go in there and boom, I'm creative now. So that's impossible. You have to kind of develop some kind of routine to do this. Michael Janda also in his first chapter mentions this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's very valuable. I think when you run your own studio and dealing with clients, it's a great book to read. He mentions this as in the first chapter of his book as well. Then you're getting sort of, you're putting badges on your business to prove how great you did that. So he wants to exceed the client's expectations, of course. So the word of mouth will be to recommend you more, because if people paid for their work, they like to brag about it, so it's good advertising for you if they're happy, of course. Soak all of the information you can get from books, from meetups, from conferences, from tutorials. Get a library card, of course, I say that all the time. So he also mentions this work is, don't take it personal. If something doesn't go right, it's not because you fucked up as a person. It's work. It's like you're getting paid for it. So sometimes you do work you're not so proud about it either. In the long run, you need to not burn the bridges. Don't be nasty to somebody because it will all come back. I had interns that worked with us in the magazine, and now they run very successful advertising companies that I would love to work for at some point as well. So the tables can turn as well. Your boss, you as the boss can be, like later on, be the boss for somebody else. So yeah, when you run a shop, it's kind of good to be strategic about it. And if I get an email response from a client who didn't like what I did or asked really stupid revisions that I really explained already 6,000 times before, and you just, in this moment, you want to freak out. So it's good to have a cool down and then answer this email the next day. The meetups are a good way to meet other people, and also they might need a web designer for their projects. Vice versa, you might need a writer that comes to a meetup that you need for some other projects. So it's good to have a network of people that you can rely on. So of course, in a shop, there's one coworker you really don't get along with. This negativity will spread to everybody else. So that's very contagious. Try to avoid that, and try to, when you see that's happening, try to bring it up and talk about it. When you're sometimes you feel overwhelmed by this project in the beginning. You go home after the brief and you just don't know how to do it, where to start. So one of the tactics that I have to start something is just set up the file structure, put on the folder on your hard drive, start collecting all the emails and information into a folder. Make the initial document, if you already know the size of it, start that, name it, build a structure with all the folders that you need in the long run. Before you do anything, then you go start sketching, put all the elements you already have on the table, because we're designers. Sometimes it's very good for us, like once we have everything in place, we know how to figure it out. So those would be my first steps when I feel like this is way too much at once. Then like break it out into smaller little bits and prepare them all separately. So there, he talks in his book, there's a grumpy and a helpful grandpa, but also he talks about you lead or you're being led. So it's good to take up that initiative. Like I don't want to tap my own shoulder, but I worked a lot with the team at Type Thursday, and I got to know a lot of people just because I got involved into that, and it was really cool in the long run to be around all these people. So I hope I'm the nice grandpa, the helpful grandpa. And So in your job, you probably have to be a lot of different things. You can't just say, I'm only the designer. Depending on how big your company is, you might have to write, you might have to sketch, you do illustrations. You can do this too. It's maybe not like your strongest thing, but you can aim to be everything for this job. You have to put some time aside if you're a freelancer to promote yourself constantly. It's about, I would say it's almost half of my time that I promote myself, that I work on projects that are not actually billable hours. So that's why my hourly rate has to be a little bit higher, because I need this time to do accounting, to follow up on emails, to promote myself, to put the word out, to answer this and that, and so on. So also, it's good to not live in this vacuum, like ask other people for help and opinions. It's good to be part of a Slack channel, a meetup, or some kind of network that you can ask questions. Very, very helpful. In a company also, I hate people that blame others. If they are in a corporate structure, it happens quite often that they hire freelancers to blame them for the failing project. And in the end, they can say, but we did everything we could. We even hired a freelancer to help us out there. But I can be that ass to blame, but I don't really like it if people do that. So don't do that. So over-compulsive disorder is a good thing as a designer. You really need to look for all the little details, especially before you put it to print. You should have a checklist to go through with making sure that there are zero inconsistencies, because after this point you cannot change it anymore and you might lose a lot of money if you go wrong at this point. So it's very important to double check that. So other times you have a job and you just need to get it over. Michael Janda calls this polish the turds. It does happen to me quite a lot too. You do have to just bite the bullets. There are some strategies where you can get through these jobs too. Sometimes you wish you didn't commit to it, but sometimes you have to just get it over with. You know at the end it will be over at some point. So one typo in a presentation will throw everybody off. It will distract them, and it will really look really bad on you. Also, if you use lorem ipsum, I don't really like it. I think that should be changed as well. I think I have another slide for that. So don't do verbatim will. If the client says he wants this and this and this and this, but you figure out that there is something that's really not working, where you really have a different opinion, keep in mind the client is coming to you because they trust your opinion about this too. So it's not a bad thing to bring this up if you feel that there's something wrong with how they approach this project. They might have a reason for it, with which point they can explain this to you. But if you just bring it up, it also means that you're not just following the orders and get it done and out, but you're sort of like invested in this as well. You want to make the best you can do. For a presentation, make it a really nice presentation. Don't do a stupid slideshow like me. No, I'm just kidding, but it does make a big difference if you have a nice presentation, and I hope my presentations are sort of okay for that. And at the end of the job, he says it's never too late for a better idea. Don't be afraid at the very, very end to rethink this, because you might overlook some really major area that needs to be redesigned. It might be hard at this point because you want to just get it done with, but don't be afraid to bring it up anyway. I don't like the lorem ipsum dummy text. There's this Jeff something. You can just get some random, or what's even better, if you have a text that exists on a website that's similar, you can copy paste that in, because that will be the most likely structure of your dummy text as well. So that makes more sense. So if you have a setup of shortcuts, let's say in Photoshop you have all the steps that you do all the time, you have shortcuts, you have actions set up for that, it will save so much time in the long run. And that is time that is billable time that you can. So if you have all these shortcuts set up, let's say in Photoshop you have these actions that you do all the time, or batches that you set up all the time. You can even set it up in Terminal, but it will really help you to save time, and that's billable time. Also plan that you don't leave everything for the very much end of the day rush and get home late every day. Try to get sort of a schedule that in the last hour you finish up your projects, you put away all the files, you don't leave a messy desktop, and then you plan for the next day already. So you can put that sort of in your schedule. He also mentions in a chapter the red flags that come up. I have some of myself here. To the client, you need to really define in writing, in an email, what are the deliverables at the end so that there are no misconceptions of what you're supposed to bring at the end, and then you didn't bill for any of this what they expected, for example. Then you need to really define who is this for and the goals, the competitors, the objectives, and what is the goal to solve so that if it doesn't work, they can't come back to you and say, well, there's still more stuff that we need for. You can go back and say that you solved what you agree upon initially. Also, before you run too far into the project, you want to make sure that you're all aligned with the brand guidelines, for example, or special dislikes that they hate, the look and feel pretty much, that you write this down before you already design a lot of stuff, and then it's something that they just can't use this color because their competitor has it or something like that. You want to make sure, if you're designing for websites, for example, that the tech, the server requirements are there, that the people that are going to be working with this product are familiar with what you're building, for example, the content management system. Also, this is kind of mean, but I've had this happen before to me as well, that people would send pitches. They didn't really want you to do it, but they wanted you to give you a lower number than the competitor, and then they go back to the competitor that they wanted to work for and what was maybe too expensive, and they say, but somebody else gave us this number, and can you match that? This happened to me too, which is really bad because it hurts both you and the other person, because they're still not going to go with you, but then the other person gets less money too. This is also a big thing. When you talk to clients, the language that you give to them matters, because if you say, for example, this is the last one on here, that you're just playing around, let me play around with this, then the notion is why are you getting paid to play around with this? You're working on this. So you let me come up with a couple versions and I'll put in a couple more hours for this would be a better answer. So a fix sounds like it's really broken. Just call it a tweak. If there are changes, then those were requests from let me refer to these requests and make these adjustments. If they want to rush it, it's more quick and productive work, you call that. If there is an issue with something, then you just talk about these elements. Don't talk about the issues because that sounds sort of negative, like something's wrong with it. Then you want the problems are just items. Yeah, let's say you don't want to improve their last version because maybe they worked really hard on it. It sounds like sort of negative. You want to modify and see which one works better. The last one is important to me. You don't say play around, because why are you getting paid to play around? You say you work on more versions, or let me just put in a few more hours to modify these changes. So instead you could just say, let me put in a few more hours to modify these requests. There you go.